What's going on? So this should be interesting. This is probably in light of the hurricanes that we just got. Florida's real estate just changed forever. Everything you must know. Ken McElroy. If you know Ken McElroy or not, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, right? Rich Dad advisor, property manager, real estate investor. This is his show. Great information, very smart guy, right? Out in Arizona. You know, this caught my eye. I was like, oh, okay. I like watching his stuff. And obviously living in Florida, I wanted to check this out. So I figured I'd bring you guys along. Let's see what's going on here. Bam.
20% of Floridians don't have property insurance, and a 350% increase in these insurance prices have made housing completely unaffordable.
I know. People are... I've seen this over the years. I know we're going to talk more about this, but you guys got to know that these insurance rates are actually restricting investment in that, in those markets. Like we certainly made those decisions in Texas and in Florida and any of the Gulf states specifically because you can't make deals pencil.
Yeah, and even for the people that live there, you know, like us sitting here, we're like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine not having property insurance because what if something like a hurricane or a fire or some kind of natural disaster comes along and it does damage or removes your home? But the truth is people just can't afford it.
Your home.
Because, you know, the insurance rates in Florida have just been crazy. And as I said before.
Okay, I mean, if you can't afford it, that means that you're not going to be able to afford the repairs when something happens. That is a problem, but I feel like there's probably a lot of people that can afford it. And that's why they're choosing to just not pay these companies. I mean, there's benefits to not having it. And that would be, you don't need to wait for insurance companies who are just going to pay you out as little as they can anyways. You know, I mean, just from my experience going through Ian and making a claim and doing all that kind of thing. And it's just what it is. If I would have known what I know now, I maybe wouldn't have made a claim. It's just what it is. That was the first claim I've ever made for homeowners insurance. When I owned a house in California, I didn't ever make a claim. So anyways.
20% of people are choosing to go bear. So there's actually a term for it now because it's gained so much popularity.
It used to be different when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Go bear.
But anyway, so
all right.
Stupid.
Okay. Anyways,
when the tide goes out.
So basically, a lot of these people, one of the issues is you can't not have insurance if you still have a mortgage. So the people that are choosing to go bear are a lot of like retirees and seniors in Florida because they just can't afford these homeowner rates.
Well, I know you.
I really wonder if that's what. I mean, maybe there's that to some extent, but also I really wonder if they've been here for a long time and they've been through storms, right? Because this is not the first, bad year or whatever of storms. Storms have happened, right? They compared, Dennisville's compared this year to 2004, where we had Charlie and Francis, and there was another one, Jerry or something with a G or something like that. It happens. It's not new. I don't specifically, this is a different topic, but I don't specifically think that they're getting worse or anything like that. I think that it's just what it is. It's cyclical. It's what it is. The previous year, it was basically nothing. And then the year before that, Ian was very bad. But before that, what happened? When was the last previous bad storm? Was it in 2017? Irma was like 2017 or something like that? I don't know. The actual locals or people that have been around longer than me would know. I know that people talk about Irma and Wilma and all that stuff, right?
You were doing a lot of research on this last week. This is a great topic, by the way.
But I feel like not everybody.
The cost.
There are people. That's what I was trying to say. There are people that they've been through it and they know, okay, we're going to flood out and this is how much it cost last time. So we need to save whatever it is, $40,000, $20,000, whatever it is, whatever the number is, depending on the size of your house. The type of damage, whether it's like, okay, we need to make sure that we can buy all new appliances and get all the drywall out and re-drywall. Maybe do the lower cabinets again, stuff like that. Just whatever it is for where you are. And that's the other thing. It's going to depend on your location and the kind of makeup of your house. Some people can just do that. And other people, to me, I'm like, if you're cutting it because you can't afford it, you're in trouble. You're in trouble.
It really does affect real estate. And Jerry, if you can play clip 1 for us.
It's called going bare, a growing trend among Florida homeowners.
We're probably the worst in the country given the way our rates have gone here. The Insurance Information Institute estimates between 15 and 18% of Floridians are going negative. They're going.
That's a lot.
It's huge. It's about double what the nationwide percent is.
So there you go.
Yeah, absolutely. So why are people choosing to do this? Obviously, the cost. So just to put it in perspective, just an average home in 2019 to insure was about $1,800, right, for the year, which is, a little over $100 a month.
So, well, first of all, let's put that in perspective. That was only 5 years ago.
Right, it was only 5 years
Right?
ago. So I was looking at like $150 a month to have insurance in Florida.
5 years ago.
Now the average cost is between $6,000 and $9,000.
I see you've got here 60.
Yeah, no, I pay nothing near that. I pay nothing. A fraction of that. Okay. Yeah. No. I did get quotes that weren't that high. They weren't $6,000 to $9,000. Maybe I got one ridiculous quote that was like $6,000, but I got like some 4s, some 5s, things like that. But I didn't. This is why you have to shop around. You can't just accept everything. You need to make calls because that's just what it is.
86 is kind of the average.
Yeah, that's
insane.
Yeah,
and
that was
also
the
it
average
depends on your house.
So
it
it's went
depends
up
on the
since then.
location.
So it's
It
between
depends on
$6,000 and
so
$9,000,
much.
which is like
age of the
$500
house.
plus a month for insurance.
It's like 3 or 4.
If it's flooded out before, if it's had a claim on it before,
I mean,
right?
A guy
all
told
of
me
it. If
once, he's
you've
like,
made
insurance
claims
companies don't
before,
really pay
just
claims.
all of it.
What they do is they build it into the premiums next year.
Right. Yeah.
So
and that's
whatever they pay, they charge you back.
And it's a lot what they do. And so, it's $6,000 to $9,000 this year, but it went up 42% nationwide last year. 42% in Florida last year. So if it's $6,000 to $9,000 right now, based on these 2 hurricanes and any more that we're going to see through hurricane season, it's going to go up astronomically again.
Let me tell you
next year.
something.
We'll see. I mean, so for mine, in the previous house, it was one price, and then after Ian, it went up about 50%. Right? Maybe slightly over 50%. And I know people that said that, theirs went up 100%, 150%, all kinds of crazy. And I'm just like, I would be shopping around at that point. I'd be shopping around. Ours went up 50%. I didn't think compared to everybody else it was that bad. So I just let it be. But then the following year, it dropped a little bit. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. Maybe that's what it was. It's like, okay, they recouped a bunch of their costs. So they gave a little bit of relief. I don't know.
Let me tell you who's subsidizing that. Whether you guys believe it or not, it's you.
Everybody else in the country.
We're in Arizona. First of all, there's nothing that goes on here. Like if we have a hurricane, which that would be amazing. Actually, that's not true.
Amazing?
But there's no way we're going to have a hurricane in the middle of the country. There's no way. Yeah, we don't have hailstorms. And
well, tell that to Asheville. Right? I mean, tell that to Asheville. I get what you're saying. I get your point. I get what you're saying. But tell that to Asheville.
Things like that. We have some things usually
that was totally unexpected.
Or there is some wind, but nothing like a hurricane. The point is, though, my properties in Arizona went up 30% last year. So I've
heard that it's going up like crazy in California too.
Insurance.
And it's like, why?
I asked my insurance guy, I'm like, what is going on?
Earthquakes?
He's like, the whole country is
there hasn't been like a big one
what's going on in the Gulf.
A long time.
It's
in
not
California.
Just the Gulf. Like these issues are happening in California with the fires. They're having the exact same issues. And Texas with all the crazy weather and the freezes and the hurricanes there. So it's not just
he also mentioned Hawaii because that was during the time when that horrible stuff went on there. So if you have
Volcano?
a name brand insurance company, it doesn't really matter.
You're not going to get insurance. And what else happened in Hawaii? You're not going to get insurance if you're like Lava Zone, 1, 2, right? It's like it starts at Lava Zone 3 or whatever. And don't they also have state insurance? I think Hawaii has state insurance for like Lava Zones 1 and 2, something like that. No different than Florida has state insurance, Citizens, which is like the safety net, because certain homes, like especially like really old homes, like they're just not getting insurance. No company is insuring them. So this is why I'm like, it all depends. This is why also in Florida, new builds are just taking off and cheaper, because your insurance is incredibly low, right? We actually looked at a new build, but went with this house instead for a couple of different reasons. One was, okay, new builds are interesting because your insurance is going to be like under $1,000. We heard a lot of like super cheap insurances because it's a new build. It's built up to the newest code, all of that kind of thing. But the reason why we didn't want to do that is because new builds are not built as well. A lot of them are not built as well as older houses, depending on the decade. So we were like, you know what? Nah, let's not, and this house is like a 30-year-old house. It's built fantastic. But also in Florida, this is an old house. And there's houses. I mean, that first house that we lived in, that was from the 60s. In California, that's amazing. That's like Palm Springs. That's mid-century. That's like desired almost, in certain areas. But in Florida, that's an old house, and that is very quickly going to become uninsurable, and you're going to have to go to Citizens, which is not ideal.
Allstate, Geico, State Farm, it doesn't really matter. These are all big companies with presence everywhere, just like you would if you're getting killed in one area and not in another. You kind of spread it around, and so that's what's going on. So whether you guys think you're paying for it or not, you are.
But to be fair, these big insurance companies have pulled out of Florida. Like, there's no like State Farm in Florida anymore for property insurance.
Yeah, there's a lot of companies that have pulled out.
And
there's new companies that come in.
So that's actually why.
That's what it is.
This happened in the 90s as well. I believe it was after Andrew. But anyways, people were moving out of Florida because the insurance was getting too expensive and insurances were pulling out. And when insurers pull out, you have less and less options. So those remaining can jack the prices. So what happened then is they created a state-funded insurance called Citizens Property Insurance. And this was initially for people that couldn't get insurance because your property was right on the water or whatever, just was uninsurable.
Usually
and
it's like the old
okay
houses.
For a while, but then in 2007,
listen, any house is insurable if you pay the premium. Your premium may be 10 grand a year or 12 grand a year or 15 grand a year, but any house is insurable at the right price. That's what I'm trying to say. And I feel like it's mostly because lots of these waterfront houses are like brand new houses and they're going to be insurable. But if it's like an older house, there are older houses that are waterfront. And any of the older houses in general in Florida are way less insurable. They tend to go to Citizens.
Law was changed and they were allowed to compete with private insurance. So basically said, even though this is a not-for-profit company, they can still compete and anyone can be insured. So, I think it was up to like 80% of people had this Citizens private insurance, right?
That's nuts.
And they were so much less expensive
80%.
Because they were allowed to be because they
tend to be the cheapest. They do, but you don't.
This is in 2022 when DeSantis said, "Listen,
if you have a choice,
because the state funds that like directly. Like when you were saying, like we fund the insurance companies through different insurance
they have
rates
to.
throughout the country. Well, when you have a state funded insurance, just like state funded anything, it's taxpayers, right? So DeSantis wanted everybody off that, and that's good in theory, but the problem is there's only really one insurance company that came into figure this out, and that was called slide insurance.
Yeah.
Which is just a terrible
It
name.
had a horrible insurance rating.
It has a really bad rating, and it's a really bad name, but it's slide insurance. But essentially,
First of all, they should change their name.
Yeah, it's such a bad name. But and then the CEO was on. They're talking about how you make all this money and this is how you do it. I mean, the whole thing's funny. It's almost comical. But so all these Floridians are having to get slide insurance. As long as slide isn't one of them, they get to cherry pick which homes that they'll insure. So there's some homes that they won't insure because they're too risky, but most of the homes they'll insure. But DeSantis said, okay, but you can only be 20% more expensive than the public insurance,
Can we back up just a second?
Yeah, let me make this point. So they jacked up the public insurance rates so that they can be 20% more expensive and still make a profit. And that's part of the reason this is all exploding right now.
What I just want to... I think we need to drive a stake in is this is a real estate channel. And so why are we talking about insurance? The reason is because the cost of insurance right now, next it's property taxes, by the way.
Yes.
But the cost of insurance right now,
which is not as bad as
making
insurance.
People decide on where they want to be, where they want to invest, and if they can afford it. That's it. So this is they say history repeats itself. Well, this is exactly. Now it's different. The players are different. The acronyms are different. The company names are different. The governor's different. The name of the hurricane's different. But this happened back in the 90s. It's happening.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Are getting a little more wiser too. They're actually saying we're going to only insure in areas that have lower losses, which is creating more problems, right? And so this happened with health insurance under Obama. When he was trying to do the nationwide
you won't
health
lose your health insurance.
I know there were something like 20 insurance companies for Arizona that were doing that, and then most of them pulled out for a lot.
Yeah, we're down to one.
Down to one. So. Whether it's health insurance or whether it's homeowners insurance or whatever.
Government can't regulate this crap.
In order for insurance to work well, there has to be a competitive marketplace, number one.
Right.
It can't be one.
Right.
But also, there are state departments of insurance in every state. What's interesting is 11 are elected and 39 are appointed. So this is a big deal, and so if you're having a problem, which I'm happy to discuss, I've had a lot of insurance problems. There are avenues. One is obviously contacting the state insurance departments, but two, there's what's called ombudsmen that are appointed that helps investigate, et cetera, for insurance and because what we haven't really discussed and what kind of gets swept under the rug is, let's just go back to Hurricane Ian, which is Florida 2 years ago. There's still 50,000 homeowners still battling their insurance claims.
No, it's real. It's wild. I don't know why. I don't get it. I'm like, is it the insurance company or did you just file late? So I made a claim during Ian. I was with a big company, like a name brands nationwide. They run commercials constantly type of name. They sent out their adjuster and then we did the thing and then they sent me a check that was ridiculous. And I was just like, what am I even supposed to do with this? Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, this is groceries for a month. What am I supposed to do with it? I can't repair anything with this. And that's why here they have insurance adjusters. Is that what they're called? They have these adjusters. Basically, they work for you. It's your own private insurance adjuster. They often have a lawyer that they work with, and they sue these companies. That's why there are so many lawsuits. In Florida is like the number one state for insurance lawsuits. It's because these companies pay out just ridiculous amounts. It doesn't even make sense. I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this? This isn't going to repair anything. Why am I paying you? type of thing. And, I'm not an insurance agent. I'm not an insurance, I don't fully know how it works or whatever, but I do know that, they're a company, they're in business, they're trying to pull a profit. If they're just paying out everything, I don't know. Maybe that means that the model needs to change or something. I mean, obviously the prices have went up, but I don't understand how, bringing it back, I don't understand how these people are still dealing with insurance from 2 years ago. I mean, there's still a lot of properties that have damage from Ian. I don't know why. I don't know what it is. Is it just people are lazy and it just I don't know. It's crazy.
Just go online and look at this. So not only do you have the insurance companies, and of course now we have these back-to-backs, Helene and Milton back-to-back. But then now you have the adjusters, and the adjusters, I mean, I know everybody's well-meaning, but the adjusters work for the insurance companies.
I'm telling you.
Pay into these policies.
Yes.
And then you're fighting to try to get the policy to kick in and pay for things, and that's actually one of the biggest things going today, and that doesn't get enough attention, and that's what these state departments of insurance are supposed to be for. And
I'm telling you, and that's why I learned, you need to hire your own private insurance adjuster, and they go after the insurance, and the whole thing is a racket. It's so dumb. It's like if you guys would just handle your customers, right? I mean, if that's what it is, if your system is set up where you don't make enough money if these things happen, which these things happen because this is not a brand new state. Hurricanes are not some new phenomenon. Same thing with earthquakes, same thing with all natural disasters. They're not new, they're not going away. It's just, it doesn't make any sense. Why do I need to hire somebody else to do the same job? And then they're just going to take, they're going to be able to get a lot more money because they're suing you. But then also they're taking a large chunk. So they may take 50% of what they get you. So if their insurance adjuster, just as an example, let's just say, if their the insurance company's insurance adjuster comes out and they're like, all right, we'll give you $2,000. Have a nice day. And you're just like, my roof blew off. Really though, the insurance, your hired insurance adjuster comes down here and is like, oh yeah, we're going to be able to get you $70,000, $75,000, something like that. And then after they're done doing their whole process, you get a check for $30,000 and that's it. So, and that's enough to change a roof, but maybe you got more maybe you got more damage than just the roof. Your roof blew off, but then it rained in your house, because the storm was still going on, just stuff like that, right? Just, there's more damage than just that. So, I mean, it's better than $2,000, but just that whole process is a racket. It's a racket. It's wild.
As DeSantis dips his toe into this, it's going to be very, very interesting because people are now, after this, I'm telling you, mark my words, people are starting to decide not to move to Florida because insurance rates are going to be in the $8,000, $9,000, $10,000, $12,000 a year, $1,000 a month.
Yeah, they already are for some people.
And to be clear, we're not talking about, maybe people think that we're talking about some big, nice mansion home. We're not. We're talking about a 2-bed, 3-bath, 2,000 square foot, 1,600 square foot home.
Right.
And so, it gets so expensive to live in these communities. And somebody just asked, and
again, I mean, that's basically what I have. And I don't pay near that. I don't.
When you have these insurance costs. And the truth
pay
is
near
you
that.
can't.
You don't.
Yeah.
That's why, several years ago as a company, we were like, okay, where do we want to invest? Well, of course, you saw the population migration to Florida, right? So that's
Florida, Texas,
that's one of the states we were looking at.
North Carolina, Tennessee,
on the
Arizona, Idaho
level, which is the only thing I was looking at, we were looking at $2,000 a unit per year just for insurance.
Wow.
Right. And so when you start to just put that in perspective, that's more than double a lot of other areas, way more than double. So if you have a $300,000 or 300 unit apartment building, that's $300,000 of insurance expense extra. So, you start to look at that's a significant part of the cash flow. And if you go all the way down onto a single family home, and you're collecting, I don't know, $3,000 a month for the home, and your insurance rates are $700 or $800.
Yeah, you're not
Right?
making money.
Well, and
yeah.
it's hard.
I mean,
to,
this guy's a real estate investor.
Florida
He's
overall
talking
had a 42%
in that
increase in
kind of
insurance
way.
from last year. So how do you plan
And again,
that
my
in your cash
insurance
flow, right?
dropped.
Like
Yes.
if you're already paying $600 a month for insurance, and then it goes up 42%, now you're paying $900 a month, and and then over time,
No,
are your
you're-
rents even going up that much? And
No.
Matthew
And no.
on YouTube said, well, I want to invest in this part of Florida that has never been hit with a hurricane or hasn't in a long time. And
Good luck.
the truth, it doesn't
Jacksonville?
matter. It's spread over the whole state. They're not just
I would say
charging
the
the
country.
areas.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's definitely being,
Correct. Yeah.
hit on
Yeah,
the
I
states.
mean, that's
because,
how
like
the
I said, the big
insurance companies
insurers
have
are
to make
pulling out
money.
of Florida. They don't insure the coastal towns any longer. So, it really is just being spread out over the whole state, and you're still going to have really
For
high
now.
insurance, even if you don't live somewhere that typically gets hit with hurricanes.
Yeah, what was it called? Bear what?
Going bare.
Going bear. That's going to be a thing.
Well, but what people don't understand about a hurricane too, and you learn this in your property in Texas, and I think it's important. It's not just the hurricane.
He had a
so
bad
when the hurricane comes in and it hits,
He
and then
was
it goes
like,
to
"God damn
Category
it."
1 or it's
You
tropical
just see it.
storm as it goes over Orlando or wherever. I think Florida had 27 tornadoes within that storm. So
That was
even
the,
just
I
'cause
think
you don't
that was
see it
the
as a
big
hurricane,
story
you
of
still
this
have
storm.
wind
That was the
damage,
big thing about this
tornadoes,
storm.
flooding,
I didn't know.
rain.
I had
So
no
you might
idea
not
that
get
Florida
the full
got
impact
tornadoes
of a hurricane
until
on
I
the
moved
coast,
here.
but
I was just
but
like,
the tornadoes a lot of
"Oh,
times do
goddamn."
just as much damage, and that's kind of what happened to you at your property in Texas.
So this is a horrible thing we went through.
Yeah,
I've been through
you
a
could
couple
just
of these.
see it in his face.
We've had massive hailstorms, like in
I've heard.
Oklahoma,
Terrible.
where 40% of the windows were broken, and the siding was golf ball size had dents in it and even
That is
damage.
so bad.
And then the roofs, so we had to do the
Yeah.
roofs. So you go to these properties and they're boarded up. They look like that. It's crazy. So what we went through Hurricane Ike in September of 2008.
Oh.
And that's actually when you go through a big a hurricane like this, that's when you start to realize, that's when that policy starts to, you start to pull the policy out.
Yeah,
and you start to
read it.
look at the things that are
The fine print.
have gone go well and don't go well. And I'll tell you,
Yeah.
the first thing that happened was, my maintenance guy sent me a photo, and he said, I swam to the leasing office. Like literally, I couldn't believe it. I swam to the leasing office. This is a picture. And what happened was the tornado hit, and then, the hurricane hit, and then there's tornadoes that came out of the hurricane and ripped the roofs off. And we lost like 100 and some units there.
Wow.
Well, there's all these things we learned. One was, exclusions can be acts of God and named perils. So you guys need to check your policies, because a lot of times they'll exclude these things. And in our particular case, we learned the difference between a hurricane, wind, and flood, because they're different. Water damage, flood,
Yes.
wind, all of that, right?
Yes.
And so they're all different. And
Yeah, if you get, like they say, if you don't have flood insurance and you got flooded, you don't say the word flood ever. You never say the word flood. It's wind-driven rain. Wind-driven rain, right? Which is totally a real thing, and that was among Ian. Ian was massive for wind-driven rain, right? We didn't get flooding, we got wind-driven rain, and that's accurate. Because the force of the wind, and it's a storm, right? It's raining. That wind at that speed will blow that water everywhere into cracks you didn't know existed, because it's so powerful. It's incredible, right? This is again, Mother Nature, acts of God, all that kind of thing. Right. Incredible stuff.
So all of a sudden you start to see these things. And then the other thing we had was, think about this, building codes change.
Right.
So we had
because of these events,
ADA or American Disability Act, or let's say a sprinkler. Maybe, now you build something has to be sprinklered for fire protection. Well, if you bought something prior to that, then all of a sudden, in order to come back in, they're going to require those kinds of things. They're going to require sprinklering. So in a couple of our buildings, we were battling with the city, saying, we're not gonna rebuild this thing until they get it sprinklered. And then we're battling with the insurance company, saying, well, sprinklering is, and so you start getting into these little nuances around building codes and whether they're included and replacement costs and what that means. But the big one was all the power was out, all the electric was out. Obviously, the sewer, water, all that stuff, it was horrible, and there was a bunch of people displaced, and of course they couldn't move back. So we still had, guess what? The mortgage payment. We still had all the things that cost to run a building. Yeah. Plus, you have basically 30-40% vacant now with all this damage. And then you have the damage. And so we're all of a sudden, it was dangerous, like you can imagine. So we had to hire crews. The adjusters, they're just like, holy crap, we have to be everywhere at once, and so we didn't have an adjuster out for a while. But we had to clean the place up to be safe, and so we spent,
this is why I want to say,
I'm going off of memory, maybe over $150,000-$200,000 just to try to clean up the and that's if we can get people. Then we just started getting strong armed by the insurance company, and to make a long story short, I'm happy to do this later, we hired a public adjuster because we weren't getting represented.
That's right.
You have to understand the nuances inside of the policy. So the policy you get is like this, but the real policy is like a foot thick. It's all legal. What's included, what is not included, and there's a whole process around hiring a public adjuster. But we ended up suing the insurance company, taking them all the way to the Texas Supreme Court.
I'm telling you.
Settled. And it was $700,000 in legal. So it was a mess.
Wow.
Years, and it was a mess. But I got a real insurance education during that period of time. And so then you bring all the way back. You bring all the way back into your other assets, and we've tightened up our policies from there. But that's what a lot of people are dealing with right now.
Yeah, and Steven had said on YouTube, unaffordable private insurance is a marker signal not to build there. It's a risk signal. And I think, you have to look at that, as an investor, as a homeowner, these insurance prices aren't going to get any cheaper.
Now, hang on a second. Here's something else that's going on, just as somebody that's here. The amount of building that's going on here, both before and still, just on my block, there's 3 houses going up. One started just before the first 2 storms, and there's 2 others that they literally just dropped rock today. The amount of building out here is nuts. It's crazy. I mean, especially coming from California, where it's way more restrictive. I mean, where I was living in California, people kind of just did things illegally. And, people just kind of built anyways, but there's not the restrictions here. And, it's these companies that, they're builders and stuff like that, right? So I'm not saying that it's anything nefarious or whatever. I'm just saying that, you can build in Florida, and the amount of building, both in neighborhoods that are already here and also just building new neighborhoods, is wild. And I don't fully get it, because there's also a fair amount of vacant homes, a fair amount, and I don't know what they're doing with them. But at the same time, I'm like, okay, well, if there wasn't the demand, why would they build them? Are they building them thinking the demand's coming or something like I don't fully, just business wise, I don't know. I mean, there was a massive apartment complex that went up recently, and I was like, I can't believe people are going to move into this. And then they finished it, right? In record time, they finished it. When those builders want to build something, they could do it so fast. And then there's other builders that it's like, for whatever reason, it's like, it takes 2 years to build a single family house. I don't get it. I don't get it. But they put this thing up in record time, and sure enough, cars, people are living there. People moved in. And I'm like, okay, all right. I mean, the amount of building. So people are building here still, right? There are companies that are still here building. I'm not saying that may not change or whatever, but I don't know. I so many people are talking now that, like, there's going to be a mass exodus out of Florida and all this kind of thing. And I'm kind of like, probably not. Probably not. Everybody has their place. People live, in Boston for 10 years. And then they're like, you know what? I've had enough of this snow shit. I've had way more than enough. I'm not picking up a shovel for snow ever again. Right. And then they move to Florida or they move to Arizona or they move to wherever. Right. People move to different places. Or, you know what? I'm not dealing with this crazy California business anymore. I'm moving to Arizona, or I'm moving to Texas, or I'm moving to Florida, or I'm moving to North Carolina, or I'm moving wherever. I don't think that people are going to just up. There will be people that leave, but there will be people that stay. There will be people that come. Not every year is a bad hurricane year. It's what it is. I mean, again, Asheville. Nobody saw that coming. Nobody saw that coming, right?
And also the loss of rents if you can't rent out your property. And I don't know, how great that slide insurance really is because it hasn't been tested. And so
let's not forget about the costs. Like, okay, 5 years ago, construction costs, renovation costs, the costs were a lot less. So now they're dealing with that too. So the insurance companies, if you have replacement costs, they're now sitting on the same as you would be, 30-40% increases for roofs and drywall and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So this inflation that we've all seen, that we're seeing in our renovations and in our construction, they're all much, much higher. I mean, you're going to go to the Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever to buy a refrigerator or a washer and dryer or a dishwasher. It's a lot more.
That shit is crazy.
All that is included in this piece, right? And if you've paid that, so their costs of putting Humpty Dumpty back together again, I guess is probably a good way to say it, is more.
Mm-hmm,
yeah,
right? Absolutely. Yeah. So these are just some things to watch, and we hope that was helpful. And we'll see you guys next week.
Cheers, guys.
Cool. All right. So that first house that I had, right? I down here needed a new roof. I knew that. Okay. We got a new roof on. I got a bunch of quotes. And down here, there's shingle, there's tile, there's metal. At the time, this is pre-Ian, the price for this house for a shingle roof versus a metal roof was literally only like a $2,000 difference. It was not that much. And I was like, yeah, let's get the metal roof. Let's get them. They last 50 years, 40, 50 years versus a 20 or 30 year roof, shingle roof. Let's do that. Let's just pay more and it'll last longer. Great. Again, then later on in the year, Ian happened. And thank God, because I learned, right, that being my first major, I learned just driving around all the neighborhoods, just looking around, all of the metal roofs were pretty much intact. Unless they were like really old, and even lots of the old ones still were fine. But overall, they handled the wind and just all of that way better than the shingle roofs. Shingle roofs, my neighbor had a shingle roof. It was in our backyard. My metal roof was still on where it was supposed to be, which is on the roof. Okay. Granted, it was brand new. Later that year, obviously, my neighbor had to get a new roof because it blew off. Had a tarp over the roof. Went to go and get quotes for a new roof. And she paid the same amount that I paid for a metal roof for her shingle roof. It didn't look as good, right? The metal roof was like double the price. And I'm just like, I think that every single house in Florida should have a metal roof. That's what I think. After seeing, just driving around neighborhoods with Ian, I was just like, that should be mandatory. That should be new code. You get a metal roof. right? You're putting up a building, you get a metal roof because they last better. They do better in a hurricane. To me, that's just makes sense to me. It's common sense. Anyways, that's interesting. So what I get from this is this has happened before. I thought that was very interesting. That was, for me, living here, that was a very interesting part. Okay, after Andrew, the rates went crazy. So I'm wondering if in the future, rates will come down as the insurance companies recoup their costs, new insurance companies come in, because again, also people have short memory. So they don't remember that, like, oh yeah, all these hurricanes happen. They just come down on their honeymoon, or they, spring break or whatever. And they're like, wow, it's really nice here. I hate freezing my ass off where I live. Or I'm ready to retire. I don't want to shovel anymore. Insert your reason, right? And then people come here. And also, there's different areas of the state. You can move to Miami, you can move to Orlando. People often think that, like, okay, if I just move to the middle of the state, I won't get hurricanes as bad. But from this storm, right, Milton, we really saw, well, all those 27 or however many tornadoes we got, a lot of them were in the middle of the state. A lot of them. My phone was going off, tornado warning. And I'm just like, whatever. Tornado warning. I'm like, yeah. All of them were all more inland because they're like in the outer bands. They're, this is gnarly. I decided, because after Ian, we were like, okay, maybe how's Missouri? Like what's going on in somewhere else? And it's like, after you see footage of tornadoes, I was just like, nope, no, I'd rather deal with a hurricane. At least I'm going to have some notice. At least I can prepare. I got a few days and things may wobble or whatever, things could happen. But a tornado, no, looks way more destructive. Anyways, it's just what it is. And I lived in California. Okay, they got earthquakes. I never thought it was a big deal, but I was never through a large earthquake, right? I was only through like these tiny little things, whether it was rolling, or I remember there was one late at night where it was just like, it was like a bomb went off in the living room. It was just like, bam! And that was it. It was wild. It woke everybody up type of thing. And those rolling ones, those are, a little queasy or whatever. They're a little bit weird, but everybody everywhere, right? The snowstorms, the hail he talked about in Texas and Oklahoma and some of those areas, that's crazy to me. Even though I grew up in, New Jersey and lived in Boston, and we had hail, but not like, we never had golf ball shot, like damaging hail, stuff like that. No way. I don't remember that ever. So that sounds crazy to me. And it's just, no matter where, frankly, Arizona sounds better. It's like, okay, what are you guys going to get? Like, what do they call them? A haboob or whatever, right? Those like major dust storms. I remember living in California in the desert, and we had those a little bit. And they get those monsoons, right? They get a flash flooding, right? During like monsoon season, they would get flash flooding, which is super dangerous, right? Absolutely can be dangerous. I remember when we moved to Yucca Valley in California, there's footage online on YouTube of areas, different neighborhoods that got flash flooding, and it went right through neighborhoods, through houses. Looks a lot like this, like how downtown Punta Gorda looks with all the muck, and you got to clean your house out, and that's flooding. You probably don't have flood insurance. I feel like just most people don't have flood insurance, especially if you're not in some of these areas in like Florida or along the Gulf or along a coast or whatever. It's wild. Well, the one thing that I do know is things do change. They don't stay the same. So you can bank on that. And you just gotta play the hand that's dealt to you. That could be whatever it is. Anyways, all right, this was interesting. Maybe you learned something about Florida and insurance and in general. homeowners insurance, all of that kind of thing. Yeah, wild. And insurance adjusters. I didn't know about public insurance adjusters until I moved here. And after having to deal with it, after Ian, I saw all the local groups talking about like, get a public insurance adjuster. Who do you use? Oh, yeah, we use these people. They were great. We use it, get a public adjuster. The company is never going to pay you what you should be getting. Never. That's not their job. Their job is to keep as much money for themselves because they're a company, right? They're in it for profit. There it is. All right. Thank you guys. Catch you later.